So once again, welcome, and we will have around 2 hours, including discussions around corporate digital crash. What can EXECS do? Live and online event today. My name is Tuomo Haukkovaara. I'm kind of personal bridge in this session because there are two organizers of this event. One is Boardman, and I'm part of the Boardman alumni board. Another one is from our national emergency supply organization, Digipooli, and I'm chairing Digipooli as well. So I'm kind of on both sides, one leg on another side and another one. And my day job is at IBM.
Okay, my name is Aija Berlund. I'm a Boardman partner, and I'm chair of Sustainability Forum, and that is partly the reason why I'm the moderator of this event. Glad to see you all here, and online also.
And we will start with a poll. There's only one question on the poll, and you that are here in the Cine A event, you have got an email invitation to the poll. There's a link in the email invitation. There's only one question, 4 options, and basically the question is more or less almost like in the topic, what can EXECS do, but it's that who is responsible for digital security, and it's not a multi-choice question, so please select the most relevant one for you, and we will come back to the poll results at the panel time later on.
Shall I go through the questions?
Yes, please.
So, who do you think is responsible for the company's digital security? Security organization / IT organization. Second, board. Third, management. Fourth, owners. Please give your vote.
And the most relevant one, because you can only choose one. Okay, so a little bit background that why these two organizations are organizing this event together. In the National Emergency Security Organization, supply organization, it's so difficult to say, huoltovarmuus is easier in Finnish. We did a research across around 12 or dozen industries, critical industries for Finnish society, and more than 100 companies 2 years ago in 2020. And we looked at that, what's the digital maturity of security and digital business continuation on those critical industries in Finland. And there was lots of good results for each of the participating company and each of the industries. And then commonly, and one common cross industries and cross everything, common finding was that these digital security was not really often part of the corporate risk management as well as the corporate strategy. So that there were lots of technical solutions, but they were kind of detached from the bigger picture. And that was the kick-off for the project that we then ordered from Cyberwatch, which is also in these places, and Jukka Viitasaari is somewhere with us, so you can talk to him during the break. And also Digipooli was the funding part, and our secretary Antti Nyqvist is over there. And the purpose was to look that, okay, little bit deeper that, okay, why is that? Are there any good examples? What is missing? And during the project, we made kind of 3 types of deliveries, 3 live sessions, a business canvas for board of directors, and a small booklet for the top teams to take digital security and business continuation into account. And now we are also spreading the word so that we are working with Boardman, with the Directors Institute Finland, Central Chamber of Commerce, and Finnish entrepreneurs, and all kinds of educational institutions to kind of make this, that this is part of the business thinking, that business has become digital and you need to take it also from business continuation point of view, as well as the risk management towards this digital world. And that's why we are here. So this is basically the background, that why we are in this session, which program you can see here, and Aya will guide us to the real session.
Yeah. Do you want me to go through the program? Okay. So first of all, the poll you just answered, we will go through the results prior to the panel discussion, because there we have some kind of manuscript concerning that with the panelists. And the first speaker is Rob Price from London. He is the co-founder of Alchemy, which is a consultancy actually. He has also founded International Corporate Digital Responsibility Manifesto. And he has got all kinds of prizes, as you already saw on the invitation and agenda. But the consultancy, Alchemy, is aligning design thinking and data, art and science, plus intuition and analysis. So Rob is going to talk about this corporate digital responsibility. And then after that, we have Case Wärtsilä. We have Erika Suerts and Teemu Eronen, and they will tell about Wärtsilä's case. Erika has very interesting title. She is, Director Cyber Engagement. And Teemu is responsible for cyber operations as director. And after these presentations, we have the panel discussion, and we have Mervi Airaksinen from Microsoft there. Nice to see you, Mervi. And Jan Segerstam from Enerim, and Timo Seppälä from Etla. Timo also teaches as professor of practice on digitalization at Aalto University. And Erika will join us at the panel discussion. And then we have closing words and networking and snacks here in the premises. So this is briefly our schedule of this afternoon.
Okay.
And about the questions, be active. We have the chat, but please be active and make questions. I will take care of them during the afternoon. Maybe the speakers want to have the questions at the end of the presentations, but we'll see. So this is briefly the introduction. Shall we take Rob on the air? Rob, are you there?
Yeah, both online and in the room. I should apologise for not being in Helsinki. Nothing would have pleased me more, but I always feel that to talk about some of the things that I'm going to talk about involving a flight wouldn't necessarily be consistent with some of the things that I'm then discussing in terms of impact on the planet. I am going to share my screen, which has got a presentation on it. So hopefully you'll be able to see this as well. Can I just check that everyone can see the slides too?
Yes, we can.
Excellent. Thank you. So thank you for the introduction. And I'm going to talk for 10-15 minutes around corporate digital responsibility as a global movement, both from certainly my original involvement dating back to 2016 through to the current day. Increasingly, I'm talking about digital responsibility and resilience. So tying it very firmly into the content of the conversation around protecting not just data and businesses, but in terms of reputation as well. And often I find that's the key driver for many of the things that I'll be talking about. So I'd like to go back to 2016, and I was stood in Paris in the middle of a think tank that was led by a guy called Thierry Breton, at the time the chief exec of Atos, now EU Commissioner, introducing, amongst other things, the Digital Markets Act and the Digital Services Act. And my background at the time was that I'd helped international organizations drive digital transformation, but I was asking the question of the impact on broader society of the pace of change of technology and digital. So how many times were we thinking about the consequential impact of some of the things that we were doing as we drove efficiencies within a business, and whether we were talking about technologies such as cloud computing or blockchain or AI or whatever it might be, how often were we thinking about the wider impact on society? So I led a work stream, an international work stream as part of the think tank with Thierry, looking at that over a 2-year period. And towards the end of 2017, start of 2018, we published for the first time what we thought at the time was a new concept of corporate digital responsibility. It was the onus on organizations to think about things that they should be looking at to have a fair and equitable impact on society more broadly. It was looking at things like accessibility, inclusion, privacy, security, etc., and trust. Now, one of the things that we then did over the kind of coming 2-3 years is to discover that actually a number of people across the globe were starting to look at this area. Indeed, actually, CDR had been defined previously to that in academic circles. And what I saw across 2020 especially was a number of definitions produced by people such as Dr. Saskia Dor in Germany, who wrote the world's first book on corporate digital responsibility. Professor Michael Wade, IMD Business School, University of Lausanne, published probably the most often quoted definition in the MIT Sloan Review, and a number of other people, especially around Europe. So Germany, Switzerland were very much the heart of a lot of these conversations around CDR. And we as a group, so those people who defined those definitions got together during 2021 to try and bring together that current thinking to take the best of all of the definitions. And thank you for mentioning the CDR manifesto earlier, but the CDR manifesto is simply taking together all of the definitions that existed up to that point in 2021 and producing them in a single framework. Now, the way that we did with that was to look through the typical CSR lenses of environment and societal and economic, but with a digital perspective, a digital lens. And we define CDR as the set of practices and behaviors that organizations using digital technology should adopt to ensure that they are perceived as socially, economically, and environmentally responsible. In essence, trying to ensure that the outcomes from the use of technology are minimizing harms, but at the same time that we recognize that we are using technology to make positive impacts in addressing some of the world's biggest challenges, whether we're talking about environmental such as climate change or data, privacy, algorithms, bias in terms of some of the consequential impact of the technologies that we're using. So the International CDR Manifesto has 7 principles. What I'm going to do is introduce you to them, probably in a short format, but at least to give you a flavor of what's there. And one of the things that we committed to was to make sure that that was open, transparent, visible, accessible by as many people around the world as possible. So one of the things that we've been trying to do is to translate that into a number of languages. All of the assets that I'm showing you today are available for reuse on the website, corporatedigitalresponsibility.net. They are Creative Commons to be used. And our intent with that is CDR is not a commercial enterprise. It's an initiative that's trying to provide a transformative framework that helps organizations have a positive impact and improve their reputation, to enable them to access investment funds, because increasingly private equity are looking at ESG, CDR as a measure of long-term sustainability, to attract the best talent, because increasingly Gen Z are making decisions as to where to work based around the purpose and the impact that organization is having on the planet. But also to take advantage of the opportunity of creating value by using technology and data to solve some of these world's biggest problems. So let's start with the first principle, which is about purpose and trust. And this takes some work that was done in Switzerland by Ethos Foundation, which looks at the long-term sustainability of pension funds. and it is therefore talking to Swiss businesses around clarity around what is their digital responsibility code, what is their corporate purpose, is that published? I'll use an example of a UK business called Yoti. Yoti is delivering digital identity services, but when they were formed, they made a commitment never to use the data for purposes other than providing evidence of your personal digital identity. So that clarity of purpose about what they're looking for, backed up by responsible digital governance. You may be familiar with the term digital advisory or digital ethics advisory boards or digital ethics boards. Indeed, guardian councils or CDR councils we're increasingly seeing emerge across the world in terms of some of the focus that organizations are having. I think Gartner were quoting 75% of medium and large scale businesses would have such an entity in place by 2023. But my challenge to that is there aren't enough people with enough knowledge of the frameworks that are emerging to be able to apply that in an appropriate way. And at the heart of that question of who is responsible, for which I have a strong opinion, but I will leave that to the later discussion, then that's so critical in that question. Do you have internal, external advice? Is that technology centric? Is it kind of pulling in other skills? So the key thing here is how do you kind of engender a purpose and trust that the consumer understands, believes, and a governance process that is consistent with evidencing that. A couple of more examples. There was an example, a high-profile example in the US recently. Axon announced that they were going to launch drones, armed drones in classrooms in response to some of the school shootings. Digital Ethics Advisory Board suggested that would not be a good thing, but they kind of did it anyway. And the Digital Ethics Board resigned, broadly resigned in protest, and had to deal with consequential reputational damage. And my point there is at the heart of reputation. And although I'm not talking about cybersecurity as you might traditionally see it, what we're looking at here is reputational threat driven by changed behaviors, changed expectations, and the impact that we're having on society and the planet. The next two principles look at societal impact primarily. So the first one is about equity, diversity, inclusion. I'm sure we've all done lots of work in that in terms of our workforces, but I want you to firmly think about that embedded in your product development as well. So as you're designing products or services for mass use by consumers, citizens, how do you ensure that diverse thinking is in place to hit all parts of society in an appropriate way? If we look at the societal well-being piece on the right, thinking about not only our data and privacy and protection, so this very firmly in the security and cybersecurity place, how we manage our data, but also thinking about how do we upskill the population to have the right set of skills, to understand the positive impact that it can have on well-being, both mental and physical and digital, but also in terms of understanding the consequential impact of things like fake news and how to identify that and understand it in an appropriate way. The next two look at more the economic side and the intersection of that, both with societal and environmental. So it's thinking about things like automation, asking the questions that as we drive intelligent automation or RPA or use of AI in organizations, how do we think about reskilling? How do we think about the impact on broader populations? How do we ensure appropriate use of algorithms, mitigating bias or explainability? How do we look at different economic models, exploring the use of data? We're so used to effectively giving responsibility for our data in exchange for free services, but how else can it be done? And then to think about the environmental and economic impact. How many of us understand the broad scale of opportunity out there for environmental startups that can help accelerate our journey in this space? How do we change consumer behaviors and contribute to create a faster impact? And how do we minimize the use of credits and offsetting other than in a verifiable way? And then finally, to think about this dual piece around the environment, how do we ensure that there's the impact of our technology is minimized. I'm sure we're all aware of things like the impact of Bitcoin from an energy use, for example, but how many of us are aware of the Sustainable Web Manifesto and the impact of things like Website Carbon, managing the per-click impact of your websites, or the energy use, relative energy use of different programming languages. For example, Python is 75 times more energy consuming than C. But then also thinking about the opportunity to innovate, to kind of solve some of those problems like climate change. I've been on all sorts of amazing calls over the last few weeks talking about things as diverse as creating diamonds from carbon extracted out the atmosphere through to dust layers around the planet, minimizing the impact of heating. So how can we solve those problems using technology as well? Now that's CDR, and it's broadly spreading across a number of countries. Certainly I've kind of had conversations like this across Europe, but I also wanted to flag the work of the UN in this conversation as well. So in June in Stockholm, the UN launched the CODES, Coalition for Digital Environmental Sustainability Global Action Plan for a Sustainable Planet. And that's a collaboration of about 1,000 people and a number of key organizations, the UNEP, UNDP, Future Earth, International Science Council, and the Environment Ministries of Kenya and Germany, to create an action plan that moves beyond the 17 SDGs and asks, how do we build a coalition that can help solve some of these problems? Now, CDR is embedded within that. The definition is in that report. I and a number of others in the CDR community were part of that work and fully support the work that the UN's doing in that space. You might also be interested to note that the UN is also out for consultation on a global digital compact, which builds on the SDGs with more of a digital focus. Indeed, in Germany, it's also worth being aware of the work of Identity Valley and the work they've done on digital responsibility goals, which is feeding into conversations at the European Commission level as well. So I just wanted to say the CDR kind of community, which is a global community, very strong across Europe, is also kind of hooked into the global community as well, because, of course, we can't think of many of these challenges just through a lens of a country or a geographic region or a market sector or a business. It has to be solved by everybody. So if there are things there that have been interesting to you in this very short introduction to CDR and its correlation with cybersecurity and resilience, then have a look at the manifesto. There's more detail in that. It's there in English, but we've also done, thanks to the work of Digipooli and having kind of been involved with Antti and others in a previous event, is now available in Finnish as well. You can become a supporter. That's not a commercial commitment. That's just a statement of support, of recognition that this is a sensible and helpful direction. And if you're, and I know actually that at least kind of one person's already done this, but if it's of interest, try the online self-assessment that just kind of has a subset of questions to try and help how you might think about the progress that your organization is making in relation to the principles and how it might be relevant in terms of setting out an action plan going forward. But hopefully that's of interest. Hopefully it sets the kind of scene for some of the rest of the conversations. And it's been a pleasure to talk to you all. Thank you for the invite.
Thank you, Rob. Thank you for your insight, your ideas and tips to us. We probably have a possibility to have one or two short questions if you have some. The chat has been very silent so far. Anybody? Now it's the opportunity to ask. What has been the most influential thing you have ever done on this sector? Can you identify?
Me personally?
Yeah.
Great question. I mean, I suppose in a sense, I would say many of the things that I've done have been very much focused around use of technology to create positive impact for people. So if I go back to my university degree, I did a computing degree because as a teenager, I was using technology to enable people with severe disabilities to enable them to communicate and learn in a more effective way. The work that I did in the 20 years ago with the UK government enabled door-to-door journey planning to provide information to enable transition of people onto transport modes that were more effective and more sustainable, for example, train versus car. And indeed, the work that I've been doing in Alchemy is very focused around working to create positive impact for organisations in this space. So, for example, we've been working with the UK government over the past few months in terms of a carbon architecture to enable effective correlation between the initiatives between departments, so that they're able to put a plan in place to drive for improvement for the country as from a net zero point of view, rather than a specific kind of department or a specific business, as an example.
Yeah, the climate change is such a hot topic. Or any questions from the audience or chat at this point? Yes, please. There's a mic. So hold your horses. No, thank
you for your presentation. Very interesting. What I would be interested to know is, like, how do you assess the state of the digital responsibility in corporation in Europe and wider world?
It's lots of room for improvement, I think, is kind of the. So I'll use some work. I mentioned in Switzerland there was some work done by Ethos looking at the long-term sustainability of a number of organisations. They're the first to do a CDR benchmark, and they've kind of benchmarked the top 48 Swiss businesses. And that clearly shows, in terms of the way in which we're looking at this, which is very similar to ESG, there is lots of room for improvement. Because let's take AI. I did a webinar recently looking at the EU AI regs and what organisations were doing in preparation for that. And I would have a view that says not very much. Some organisations in some sectors that are more familiar with kind of the impact of regulation are absolutely doing things. I will highlight the work, for example, Jean-Arnaud Chartin's doing with Merck in Europe, and they're big supporters of CDR. But that's a pharmaceuticals and life sciences kind of organisation is the type that understands some of the consequences of the regulation. But let's be clear, we understand GDPR, we've done things about that. AI regulations are coming, environmental regulations are coming, and the Digital Markets Act and the Digital Services Act have been implemented in Europe. There are things happening in China. There are things happening in the US. I mean, the Software and Materials Act in the US is kind of interesting to look at the moment as well. So I think one of the key question, my favorite question, is who is responsible for understanding all of those regulations and policies and determining what's the right thing to do for the organization. And I say this as my previous life COO, Deputy CEO of a UK, Germany, Switzerland kind of regional kind of business unit, is how do I keep track of that? How do I make sure I've got those programs in place to keep my reputation protected and to take advantage of the opportunity it presents if I can deliver products and services to the market that help move it forward in a positive direction? So I would say there are some great examples out there. I run a podcast that talks to some of the people that are doing some amazing things across those organizations to help share, to connect the dots, to shine a light on that. But there's a long way to go. Excellent.
There's one question on the chat, and it's from Boardman Managing Director Taru Lindemann, this is a Boardman event. So what should board ask from management to make sure they have considered the CDR questions enough?
I'm going to have to kind of answer that with have a look at the self-assessment that I mentioned earlier, because it is just a guide, but as a guide in terms of it looks at each of those 7 principles in turn. It asks some questions that are interesting for people to kind of fill in. It's based on work that we've done previously in far greater detail. I will quote some feedback from one of those clients, which was an international business household name, who said after 2 weeks exploring that in a little more detail and understanding what they were doing across their business, they found it, and I'm quoting, an emotional experience, because it opened their eyes to some of the consequential impacts of some of the things that we were doing, and equally the opportunities for improving some of the things that they're doing. It's not to say what they were doing was wrong. It just opens a broader perspective. So I think I would say, have a go at the self-assessment, and if that prompts some interest in kind of any of the specific areas, then happy to talk about that in greater detail.
Thank you. Excellent. Lovely. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you for your insights, and keep up the good work. We will hear from each other probably later. Thank you so much. And now it's time for Wärtsilä case. So Erika Suerts and Teemu Eronen, please. The stage is yours.
Cyber Engagement Director at Wärtsilä, and my background, was mentioned before, is not in cyber. I've got culture transformation, change management, and leadership development angle. So that's the lens that I'm plugging into the cyber domain, if you like. And today it's my pleasure to be here trying to bring some perspectives or examples of what can EXECS do with your colleague Teemu.
Erika, we have both seat in cybersecurity management team in Wärtsilä, and I'm heading the cyber operations. Basically, that's everything what we do hands-on when it comes to cyber incidents we face, threat intelligence, ethical hacking, so testing, and also a lot of different risk assessment, including also cyber due diligence. I will come back to that a bit later.
Cool. So, like said, we're going to bring maybe a proposal, threefold proposal of something that can be done at business leadership level. And maybe to set the scene, we'd like to start with this quote. I'll give you just a moment to read through it. So, it's about time that senior leaders get serious. So, how to bring that lens of being serious? We can start with maybe one point that we'd like to make. First of all, it comes from the understanding of cyber risk as business risk. So not looking at it as separate and somewhat secluded risk, but actually translating it into reputational risk, financial risk, you name it. So in a nutshell, not look at it as something of a separate domain, as much as looking at it as a business opportunity. So the level of maturity in cybersecurity, which can be demonstrated through business operations as well as products or service offering, is something that the market assesses and determines also a competitive advantage for an organization. So looking and understanding cyber risk as business risk, integral part of that, as well as a business enabler. So from that understanding, then there's a moment of integration. If you like, I like to call it a change leadership exercise in terms of role modeling cybersecurity as a civic skill, and therefore fostering a culture of cybersecurity across all levels of the organization. Through understanding and integration, it comes almost natural to prioritize then cyber as an intrinsic part of business decisions. So for all of that to happen, the key word I'd like to offer here is engagement. When we see senior leaders engage strongly with cybersecurity, it becomes very visible, maybe in at least three ways. One is that there's role modeling of it as a civic skill. Then clearly from a risk angle, the ability to take risk-based decisions that take fully into account the cyber domain. And then looking at cyber as a competitive advantage, therefore leveraging cybersecurity as a business enabler. Now, that was a bit of framing how we do it. We talk about how we do it as an example in Wärtsilä through three principles. In fact, you find them on the right. So how to engage with me, don't talk at me. So I don't know if you or maybe in your teams there's been a perception that cyber can be complex, if not even mysterious, and maybe it's full of jargon that is not very accessible. So first, to actually access the understanding of what this is all about, the point of making cybersecurity accessible and relatable. so that, without dumbing it down, but without mystifying or giving it too much of a complexity, which is unnecessary. So make it relatable. The second thing is maybe a balancing act as well as creating the burning platform, alarm without alarmism. So a balancing act as in there's a clear reason to pay attention to it, the alarm side, and at the same time, clarifying that cybersecurity has real consequences on real people, on real businesses. And at the same time, there's no need to create alarmism around it. Actually, quite the opposite. Creating at the same time an empowering perspective so that people actually understand that we all can do something about it. The third point is hearts and minds. So if the entry point to understand is maybe the what, let me understand what we're talking here about by engaging with me. The second is maybe the why, so the burning platform. The third is on the how. So it's all good and fine, I believe, in raising the cyber business acumen, if you like, from a rational point of view. At the same time, there's the need to create or evoke also an emotional connection to it, so that it speaks to the mind as much as to the emotions, and then there's a stronger connection created to it. All right, so this is one angle, and this is one lens. Engagement, prioritization, making cyber part of every business decision. You want to pick it up from there, maybe, Teemu?
I would love to, but before I do that, I have to tell you, I've been working at Wärtsilä for 5 years, and Erika joined the team a year ago. I would say the engagement part has been the most important part of our actions during the past 12 months, and also has most impact. So we finally reach people within the company, but also the stakeholders. And that has been something extraordinary for the rest of us who are in the management team, because we did not understand. We didn't know how to speak to people.
So it's very well, I think, to give out messages that relate to the profession and organization and work context. But ultimately, it's about secure digital citizenship. So we do speak to the person as a private person as much as a professional. We are one, and the behaviors that we adopt to secure our private life, if you want, or our digital footprint, we bring them across to the workplace. So we don't want to focus, and that's where the hearts and minds maybe comes in, don't want to just focus on the professional elements of secure behaviors, but also holistically on a person and what it means if you're a parent, what it means if you're probably having 1,000 roles in your digital footprint. Yeah.
It's a big part also for us to be as a socially responsible, not only digital responsibility or corporate responsibility, but socially responsible. So thanks. I was about to ask tech department.
Tech.
All right, let's see.
Yeah.
All right, fine. So, good. I will now walk you through very briefly about the other two topics. So first was engagement. I'm going to cover mandate, and I will cover investment. But before I do that, going back to Rob's presentation and content, I did the assessment for our company. And I responded to these 7 different principles. And I don't think we are doing that well at Wärtsilä. So it says here, this is the executive summary. It says your overall digital responsibility benchmark is 36%. So Rob, I'm not sure if you are still listening, but I'll come back to you. We need to learn how to do that and how we can be much better with that. So it was really interesting exercise. And from cyber perspective, I tried to actually look at it more holistically. And I think I have a pretty good message to our board members about these things. So, mandate, governance. You all are members of board, members of management, or executives. And I think this is also reflecting a lot about the poll we had at the beginning. I happen to be lucky one to have the results here, and I think the people joining the stage after this, when you discuss about the poll results, this relates a lot. So there is a 50% of the answers saying that the cybersecurity responsibility lies on board. I agree with you, 50%. There is 41% saying that it lies on the management. I also agree with you, because that's where the things get done. And that's when it comes to the cybersecurity to have the mandate. So if the board of directors or board of management are blind, as they usually are for the cybersecurity or risks, even the cybersecurity organization don't have a mandate because board doesn't know where the mandate is needed. They don't understand the mandate. And that's why we have few proposals, and we are, as a company, working on this. So first of those is about the position of the cyber unit. So it depending on the size of the company, of course, the core business, geographical distribution, it should be somewhere where the cyber unit people can have an impact. And I'm saying this very bluntly, but it should not be under the IT. It's not a back office function anymore. It was maybe a few years ago still, and we tend to think here still in North Europe that it's a back office function, but it's not. It's a support function, yes, but when it's well done, when it's a hybrid model, also the businesses and other stakeholders have a role there. So that's when it comes to orchestrating and have a political sway. Meaning sway means slow movement, sideways or either way. But anyway, it has that sway, it has that impact. It collects those who might need help, who should be considering cyber. And finally, engage. Right? Business stakeholders. It doesn't mean necessarily only within the company, but also the customers, authorities, regulators, societies, all of those. So that's why we are working within the Wärtsilä now to shape our governance for the cyber. There will be separate cybersecurity board, and we try to collect exactly the people that I mentioned to be part of that board to help us to make the right decisions, but also get their needs so that we can act in the right way.
So maybe there, Teemu, you get your governance, you get your mandate, you get engagement, and the question typically is not if, but when do you need to be ready? So what's another perspective to be ready?
Well, the question, yeah, we should have been ready for 5-10 years ago. We all seen that. But anyway, coming back to the investment, so all this cost money, of course. It costs resources. And so far, and still today, we see cyber is an afterthought. If you think about the product development, we still tend to think about 80-20 principle. So when we talk about the software or digital products, when 80% is ready, it's launched to the market because it's critical to be first in the market, to have a business up and running, to show the return on investment. What happened to cybersecurity? What happened to testing? Well, we'll do it. And that's why it's so important to consider these things as a forethought, to look at the mergers and acquisitions. Cyber due diligence is really important. Product mix, all of those things. Maybe final thing about investment is resourcing. So right now we have about 4 million open jobs globally for the cybersecurity professionals. I would claim it's 5 million, but 4 million is the official number. So that's something that we need to work on. We need to keep people that are already within the cybersecurity domain. We need to keep them there. We need to keep them motivated, but we need also diverse cybersecurity skills. So unfortunately, only 20% of cybersecurity professionals are female. Only 20%. And guess what? In Europe, that number is 7%. There's no diversity yet there. That's my part. So engagement, mandate, and investments. That's a pretty good start for all of the companies. And to keep in mind when you are making decisions in the boards.
Thank you.
Chairs on the stage, you have time to make questions to Erika and Teemu. Any questions here from the audience? If I understood it right, it's not about IT, it's about people, right? And you have to engage your customers, your stakeholders, your people.
And even beyond. So what we, October now is Cyber Awareness International Month. One lens that I invite also to take is look at cyber resilience as beyond ourselves and maybe the institutions, but even beyond our industry or specific ecosystem. So try to look at how we can increase sharing, whether it's threat intelligence sharing or other sort of sharing, because it's a common challenge. So look even wider beyond the value chain which we belong to.
And it's actually a civil skill.
Yeah, if you frame it that way, yeah.
Please, the mic to this gentleman over there.
Can I answer that?
Go ahead.
Okay. We have lost millions of US dollars businesses because we could not meet cybersecurity requirements as a company already so far. And there are definitely a baseline. So we need to certify certain products and services. It's been done, but I think it's been done too late, 10 years too late, even more so. So the culture is not there yet. I wouldn't say Wärtsilä is a digital company. It's hard to even say that it's a technology company. It's a company making analog things. We make engines. So there is a big leap we need to make sure that we will one day be a digital company, but I believe we are on the right track. So when it comes to the competitive advantage, I think also any ISO 27K certification that we are now trying to pursue by end of next year is going to be a big deal for having a competitive advantage in the cybersecurity. But any result of product testing, I'm talking about assessment, penetration testing, vulnerability analysis, it's a big thing already. So if we can prove that, it's going to help us a lot.
And maybe just a quick note to add on that. For example, the entire sales force to become conversational in cyber in terms of a competitive advantage, it takes yet another step. So maybe that's also another frontier.
Thank you. There is another question from the audience, please.
Antti Suominen from Adecco. Thank you for the presentation. Really interesting. You mentioned diversity as a need for cybersecurity and cybersecurity workforce, and you mentioned gender. Not sure how gender helps in diversifying, but what are the other things that you're looking for in a cybersecurity organization in terms of diversity?
Yeah. So thank you. Very good question. I should have been more clear, but with the given time limits, I just had a shortcut. So first thing about the diversity, having a male-female ratio, it's about the attention to details. It's about the culture within the cyber unit. It's a very male-dominated, aggressive area. We cannot communicate in a proper way, so we need engagement people. That's what I mean. So I believe the female workforce could bring not only the skills and attention to details, but also that human element. So it's not about hoodies and Red Bull. or hacking. It's about something else, something that we need to grow beyond the current things. The other thing about the diversity is the cultural diversity. So right now, I am grateful. I'm extremely lucky to have people in my team from US, from Philippines, Belgium, many other countries, and they bring together that understanding of working with the different regions. They have that small thing, nuances, when we get attacked by the ransomware, and everything is written in Chinese. They do understand actually that thing. They know what they're asking for, why they chose to attack Wärtsilä. And that's a big thing, because otherwise, for the forensics or incident response purposes, we would not have an idea. We would not start looking for the lateral movement, meaning they're moving around the company to different places. But with that skill, that cultural insight, we are actually capable of at least having an idea.
Teemu, I hate to cut you, but we need to proceed.
Please cut me.
We have the panel about to start. Please take a seat, Erika and Teemu. Thank you so much for your presentation.
Thank you.
I will invite to the stage Mervi Airaknen from Microsoft CEO. Please select the chair you like. And then we have two gentlemen. We have Jan Segerstam, who is Vice President, Deputy CEO of Enerim, which is a service company with the mission to create sustainable business in tomorrow's energy markets, right?
That's correct.
Welcome. And then we have Timo Seppälä, who is researcher at Etla, economic researcher, and also professor of practice on digital operations at the Aalto University. Lovely to see you here. And shall we start with the poll results? Actually, Teemu already revealed them. So the 4% of you guys replied that the responsibility belongs to security organization and IT organization. 50% that it belongs to the board, 41% to the management, and 4% to the owners. How do you feel about that? Any quick reactions from Jan, maybe?
Well, I think it's a shared responsibility, and I think it's very important that the board can set the mandate and understand the question, while it is up to management to then execute and really ensure that things get done so that the cybersecurity people can do what they are best at.
Right.
So it is a shared response, and none of the people can be left out of the equation.
That's right. And as the overall title of this panel discussion is that who will ultimately take responsibility for digital security. Anybody who would like to pick up this one, the big question?
Well,
Timo?
I think that the ultimate sort of the party within the organization to take the responsibility is, of course, the board of directors. And so they take the ultimate responsibility of basically everything that would happen within the company. Managing the business continuity plan, whereas all these sort of risk assessments that are done within the organizations are basically being mandated from and coordinated from. So
right.
So it's really the board.
Yeah. Is it really in practice? Mervi, you are sitting in those various boards of directors. So does it work this way?
I see it, of course, board in the end is responsible for this one, but nevertheless, it's a team. Success is a team sport overall. So we need everybody on board. I like the way how Wärtsilä is building on it as a part of the culture itself, because that has to be it. And I think I like that Wärtsilä was saying that. I think there is a saying nowadays that every company is a technology company. You said, yes, that you are still analog company, but nevertheless, you are going to digitize the business and going on a technology company way. And this is increasing and this has to increase the awareness of the cyber, of the digitalization of the businesses. We completely need new skills for the future to govern, to manage the business and the priorities. So we live in interesting times overall, and the cyber aspect will come ever increasingly more important moving forward.
Has any of you done that assessment Rob mentioned? You, Teemu, you did it. Anybody else? Is that something totally new to you? Timo, what kind of tools you utilize?
Well, it's kind of a new thing that I think this ideology behind is sort of an assessment is that you need to take into account not only the organization, but you need to consider everything that from your customers' perspectives, from your supplier network perspective, as from the society perspective. Well, as we know, companies are typically only considering things from their perspective. So companies are really working inside sort of a tall walls, and they are just working with those things. And that is basically being sort of or it has been sort of a problematic for the future of these type of tools coming into place, because companies are not used to work with their partners.
They are in some kind of bubble, or
it is
vacuum.
Exactly. It's a bubble that where they work, and so there is a lot of these type of an entry or barriers that needs to go down from the company perspective.
Do you have any tips or hints how to do it? How to get rid of those barriers and walls, Chinese walls?
Well, I think it's first. I think that it goes back to the board of directors within the company that saying that we are not. Let me sort of tell you a short example. That, for example, the companies are now publishing on LinkedIn that they have these nice emission-free electricity certificates. Well, you can get those certificates in 2 minutes. What has that to do with actual implementation?
With that?
Exactly.
Yeah.
You can buy sort of these type of certificates from within hours.
Yeah.
That you are a cyber secure company, but actually it does not tell you anything about the actions that you are doing with your whole network.
Right.
But I need to say, I think overall, in a big picture, we are still on the early phases of digitalization. So I think the COVID has driven it and accelerated. The war in Ukraine has accelerated. And we are still kind of forming the new norms, how to govern the businesses, how to run the businesses. And that's why we are not yet quite clear. There are different assessments to be done and things like this. But nevertheless, we are going to the right direction. We are talking on the right topics. And then I'm thinking that businesses are digitalizing already. If I put this on a perspective, we see on a global level that what is actually happening on a daily basis in the cyberspace, for example, we see 24 trillion threat signals every day. And we analyze those. We try to understand what is going to happen. But just to give you the view that that's a tremendous amount of threat signals that we are seeing already today. Imagine when every company is kind of maturing on their digitalization path. So we absolutely need to now raise the awareness to put the more focus on this topic, because the attacks and consequences coming out of these cyber attacks, those will increase. We have only seen few kind of big ones so far.
Building exactly on that, I think, and back to the question, what can we do? I think when you're looking at engagement, not just internally or in a value chain, I think I was mentioning across the walls, the geopolitical landscape, the threat scenario, and the fact that there's so many commonalities. At least go out and look within your industry what is there that can be accessed and shared in terms of, it's a give and take equation, all in all, at least within your industry, but also beyond. If you can join forums, actively join forums that talking about threat intelligence sharing as a minimum, because fundamentally, I think we are all in this together. It's quite a motto in this specific times. I think.
Yeah, I totally support what's being said here. And I think Timo touched on an important point, that the motivation of the company stems from the company itself. And when you start to think about what the effect of cyber threats are, then you notice that there's a link there. And there's a misnomer that you tend to think as a company, well, we're just this company. Nobody's going to attack. Well, 24 trillion, it's not about you. It's about who can we find whatever. And it's about automation. And that makes your company a tool within a threat. Exactly. And that then goes into actually bringing that motivation for you. Yeah. And it really brings back the point from Erika about engaging with everybody in the community, because then you can share and understand, oh, this is the thing. This is what we in our industry can do. So there are many good points here.
Exactly, but and one more thing I wanted to add on this one, because we are talking about the threats coming outside, but also the cyber threat can come sometimes inside. So it's a holistic, very holistic footprint, because people can also share. There might be someone inside the organization, in the global organizations, who might be sharing some important data. So it's important that the board, the management, has a very holistic view on everything that is actually happening within the organization. And these kind of skills, yes, as I said, we are early days now, but these we need to ramp up fast.
Yeah.
And this is more about people skills as well, because these things don't always come in digital form.
Yeah, and then Timo.
Yeah, well, I think that many of these threats that what we see are like sort of a black swans. That those sort of threats are almost important to predict or to know before they actually come. And for example, I think that I have lived through SARS, MARS, and now I have lived through Corona. I basically have some experience from the past how to handle epidemias and pandemias, but really that most of these threats are black swans. So they are not on the radar. They are not on the radar of anybody, and therefore, sort of this type of a knowledge sharing between the companies is basically being needed, because if that happens with one company, then it easily could happen with the other ones around.
So is it so that all the companies should have some kind of war room and make scenarios and be prepared? Your company can become a weapon, or somebody mentioned that earlier, if I remember it right.
I think you should have your business continuity plan in order as a basic starting point. Or
go ahead.
Please, go.
But I think also this information sharing is very important, and you need to be aware where the information is shared at the moment, because the level of maturity, I know I stopped saying that, but nevertheless, we are not there yet fully. So basically important that you are part of these forums where you can get the kind of the intelligence, because the intelligence is there. There is a lot of information available, but you just need to start to look at those.
Yeah, I would say that when we as a service company started looking at this, we noticed that we have tentacles everywhere. We talk with a large number of companies. We have lots of interactions. There's people, there's systems, there's physical locations, all of that. So having your trusted realm in which you can share information, and also ensuring that that trusted realm can be trusted, is important, because then you have the resilience to actually react when the black swan comes that nobody actually knew was coming.
And I think one lesson learned from the Ukraine, now we go on a really heavy side, but nevertheless, as we have been there hands-on on the ground, we have learned a lot about what kind of tools, malwares, threats are out there. And then we have established with the different governments around the globe information sharing communities, so that we all can learn and start to kind of get better on this one. So we know what kind of attacks there could come and things like this. So it has been very insightful, and I think there is a threat that everybody is willing to share and build the community around. So you said it's a common threat, and people are really cooperating.
I think the sentiment is growing as well in this specific historical times too.
How about then trust within your international organizations? You have numerous cultures, nationalities. What is the balance with trust and, I don't know, counterintelligence perspectives. Have you thought about those? Can you open up a little bit?
But, well, it really depends that what type of a trust you are talking about. Basically, some years ago, when I wrote the paper, a comment paper to our government about the levels of digital trust, in that paper, I basically identified 7 different levels of digital trust.
Okay, tell us.
And basically, let's put one example and basically as an example or a conclusion based on that, I proposed that we should have 7 different internets.
Okay.
And basically one for the shadow markets, whatever that is, one for social media, one for a different type of things. And the last I had, if I remember correctly, I had military operations and atom or the power plants that what we have. So I think that we need to understand that there are different levels of trust. And for example, when it comes to operating within those levels of trust, we don't have a system yet in place that how do we certify different operators to participate that specific level of trust with operation. And that needs to be in place. So for example, all the Wärtsilä products that are being used in the market should be basically certified against a certain level of digital trust so that they can operate across the power plants. And I think that they are partly, but there is no official sort of a system to do that.
Did we build a system like that?
Maybe a short comment on that, because on the large scale, exactly like you say, Timo, then when we come to a more closed realm, there are systems in place, and those give structured levels of trusted security between counterparts. But now we go into what you called the heavy stuff. And we go into the governmental realm, and we go into the political alliances that have formed in the global atmosphere. And when we look at those systems, they have been developed in an era where digital was not the mainstream. So they have been designed in ways which say that, for instance, we have services and we have content that is within this kind of realm. And we need to work with that in a way that we basically separate ourselves from digital, and we become basically a set of laptops with no connections, with printouts, with these kinds of things, which is not responsive to the kind of pace that we see in current operations. So these things need to be taken up a notch so we can talk about digital realms of trust in also the heavy stuff. And that can be taken over then into the sort of digital economy, which is all of it.
Yeah, that's why I've been basically saying that all the GDPRs are a big mistake. All the new Digital Data Act is a big mistake. All the AI Act that is coming up, it's a big mistake, because we are trying to separately sort of regulate something which is not separate from the actual things that what we do. And this is crazy. So we are basically building sort of 2 fields of legislation, and there is no. So there is no future with that track.
Mervi, go ahead.
But I'm just saying that I think we are also acknowledging that. So we keep on changing the legislation every 2 years, trying to find the right balance on this one. So at least we are trying overall, but I fully agree with you. They are not like separate things, but it's kind of reflection of the maturity where we are at the moment.
Sure. Exactly. And then the Chinese, they are building their own system, the US own system, Europe own system, and like, what a mess. Any ideas how to solve the problem?
I think overall, if we make this, I think we are not here solving this big issue here, but just getting raise the attention toward this one. And what if we consider that the boards are responsible for this one? What they should do? They should at least hold the discussions regularly on this topic. I think that's the essence. First, start with the situational awareness. Some of the boards are already having it, but some don't. So the essence is same as you do your bookkeeping every year. You should do
pull in intelligence,
Exactly.
understand how that impacts or not your business decisions and your context.
Yeah.
and manage the risks.
Yeah. Was it so that we are able to share your presentation, Erika and Teemu?
Oh, yeah.
Because there was quite a nice list, and same with Rob's, I hope. Did Rob give permission to share his presentation? Excellent tools there for all of us who do board work. At this point, any questions from the audience or from chat? I don't think so. Yes, please. We can trust on a man with a yellow jumper.
Just to share some of my own experience and to hear your view on that, but one of the things that I found very, very important is psychological safety in the organization, and the fact that that people need to know that because the human is the weakest link always. If there is some sort of a breach, that you raise your hand immediately. And act and make sure that everybody knows immediately. How do you see building that psychological safety in the organization, that people don't try and hide their cyber mistakes?
Yeah, okay. Okay, Teemu.
Last question. Erika has a very zero story.
I was about saying, so clearly, it depends on the organizational culture. It just comes into the overall culture or psychological safety level.
Yeah.
So in just a couple of days, what we'll release is the testimonial of a victim of a cyber attack, recent one, who has the courage to come out and say, look, this happened to me, and these are my 3 lessons learned for you. And what it comes with is cyber risk is really real. Yeah. Really. So just at least do 1, 2, 3 things, not to repeat the experience I've been going through. Shares the emotional angle of what it means to be the victim of a cyber attack and how to manage the emotions that go with it and how to trust the experts to remediate the situation. So I think to open that up as well is what is then the level of psychological safety in digital world? When we start talking about, just the other night was discussing this about zero trust, identity access management, how is that reflected in the digital sphere and even in your personal digital life, trolls and all the social disaster that might happen out there. I think it's quite interesting because there's a divide between the human interactive psychological safety and what happens on the digital side.
Thank you for an excellent question. Anybody else? If not, go ahead, please, the mic to the gentleman over there.
Thank you. I have to take the opportunity. Very, very good discussion. First, just have to comment that users are not the weakest links. It's kind of thinking that when all the technology has failed, then there's the user, the kind of last link, who can try to save the day. But that's difficult. The topic of the discussion was who is ultimately responsible. Accountability, responsibilities, they go through the organization, and I agree with the board and CEO and such. But what do you think about kind of those guys who are actually have a hands-on responsibility? Because most of the cybersecurity breaches happen because of user mistake, wrong configurations, bad software, hardware failures. So, and many cybersecurity incidents are because of, let's say, poor management of IT environment, for example. So how you split the responsibilities? How you work in your company so that actually the technology people, they get the training they need and they get the responsibility?
Mervi first and then Jan.
Yeah, but I think it's a very good question. And I think this all comes with the leadership and the management of, they need to listen like any other team member, also the cybersecurity team members, and understand what is actually cooking, understanding that this is really, there could be risks growing that maybe that person the manager is not paying attention. So there has to be the dialogue. I don't remember, how did you say it? Engagement or the talks kind of really be there and understand the old software, the ending support, then the outdated skills. So these are the things, of course, as a good team leader, you make sure that these are fixed and raised to the attention of the board or the management or the CEO. So I think this is also just understanding how important it is that actually the people who are doing the real job, they get heard.
Thanks, Mervi. Then Jan, Timo?
Yeah, so I would bring in the notion of equating this with what we've been doing in safety for many years, in safety critical environments. In safety critical environments, it's very, very, very crucial that everyone can raise their hand and say, I have an issue, or I have a question, or I have done something, and that there are no repercussions, what we call just culture in a safety environment. This has to be there also in a digital cybersecurity world, also for the professionals who are working with supporting, but also everybody participating. So the operational people, those people who are hands-on in the business and hands-on with the cybersecurity. When that culture can be fostered, and this just culture allows for the bringing up the issues and handling the issues and talking about the issues, then you have the chance to actually act and make good on the training and all the expertise that is needed so that you can then have an effective response. So it's not about who's at fault, who's responsible. Yeah. It's about how can we actually get the chain working together and by that then resolve whatever's coming.
And learn from the mistakes.
Well, learn, yeah.
Timo?
Yeah, I think that again, I will go back to the real world from the cyber world. And basically, when there is a mistake in a product, or when there is a false component or in the food recipe, we are forced to withdraw the products from the market. And there is always an announcement related to that fact. But really, what happens within the company, we are not treating cybersecurity acts in a similar manner within the companies as we are treating product withdrawals from the market. And should we do that? Should we basically launch exactly the same type of a process for the companies for their software operations? If there is a mistake on the Microsoft product, let's announce that into the world and say that, okay, we are now we are withdrawing from the Microsoft because of the fact that they have bugs in their products. This is not happening. So we are not taking these cybersecurity threats seriously because we are not willing to open them up that okay, what is happening?
Good point.
We are not telling the testimonials.
Good point.
And
okay, I hate this, but we are running out of time. Now the last round from every one of you. What is the most important thing you would like to share with the audience here at the Cinea studio and our audience online? Who would like to start?
Well, I can start. And I say, engage with your people, and it's not about you. And that's it.
Excellent. Next.
I'm saying that cybersecurity is not the rocket science, so please read today something related to this one. Then you get started.
Next,
if not there
Erika?
already.
I just say if you haven't it already into your team meetings or regular board agendas, add it starting tomorrow.
Excellent. And Timo, the last but not least.
Put your most important company information into the computer that it's in the Faraday hack and unplug it from internet.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Excellent stuff. And now it's Tuomo's turn for the final words. And I have some announcements to make after Tuomo.
So thank you, panel, and thank you, audience, for the questions. So we are about to summarizing and closing. I think everybody got lots of tools and to-dos from the sessions and from the keynotes. My call to action is that, okay, do the CDR, corporate digital response self-assessment, and see that where you are, and especially what needs to be done. And from Erika and Teemu, it's really right engagement and get the mandate and then make the investment required, so that it's basically quite normal business approach. In the panel, there were multiple topics, but a couple of things that I'd like to raise. That this intelligence sharing in Finland, we have luxury of having state-owned or state-run cybersecurity center that runs EXECS groups, Information Sharing and Analytics Center. You can't go there, but you are invited if you are a critical operator in Finland, and they are run at around 10-ish in different industries. So these are confidential or the trustworthy exchange groups, and when something happens, for example, in energy sector or food supply sector, they are exchanging information in cyber, so that things are happening. And this kind of business continuation, we trained about 500 people from 160 or something organizations last week in a cyber rehearsal, Tieto 22, and there the focus was not really on technology, it was on the people and leadership and how the crisis management team would operate in certain situations which were extremely bad. So that in this virtual world that we trained, they were much worse than what you are seeing from the newspapers, which is worse enough already. But that's also something that I recommend that you do, that you form your crisis management team. It's not necessarily equals to your top team, so that it might be that some areas you need to take the best person, best specialist in that, and not the leader always. But train and try some scenarios that are now easy to imagine what could happen in the world. And finally, from the panel, the psychological safety, I think, and Jan mentioned already that in physical safety area, that's pretty far, and in airline industry, that's basically that there's always that everybody raises their hands that this happened and openly works for everybody, that it's much safer environment when whatever happens. There's no guilty people, but it's always hands up and let's see how we can improve. So in cyber world, I guess that we need to a little bit encourage to the same direction, that it's not a shame, it's not our worst, but it's good for all, that if we understand and work on these. But finally, we are approaching the end time, and I will give a short Boardman advertise.
Yeah, thank you, Tuomo. Yeah, as this is co-organized by Boardman, I shortly show you two things. New corporate governance and board work in Finland hybrid training will start in January. It takes about 3 months, 4 sessions, and all in English. So if you are interested in that, please join. We have done this now twice, so this is the third round about to start. And it has been received very well. And the second one is this sustainable growth, cornerstones of sustainable growth, which is organized by PwC, Technology Industries, and InHunt Headhunters. And that will take place exactly in 1 month, the 27th of October. Is it at Boardman premises or PW? Where? At Sofia, says Taru. But that's all, folks. Thank you so much for coming here. Thank you, our audience online. What can I say? It's time to networking and snacks. And you guys online, stay safe, stay cyber safe. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.